of them is al-lisan, the tongue. Al-lisan, the tongue, is one of the tools. Now, you don't need to go to IKEA or B&Q or other those stores to find the tools. Okay? Now, the tools are inbuilt. So tongue is one of the tools that we use to commit sins. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ says, مَنْ لَمْ يَدَعْ قَوْلَ الزُّورِ وَالْعَمَلِ بِهِ فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ فِي أَنْ يَدَعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. That whoever cannot give up قَوْلُ الزُّورِ. قَوْلُ الزُّورِ is giving false witness or lying, falsifying. Okay, so anything false is قَوْلُ الزُّورِ. And وَالْعَمَلُ بِهِ, and acting upon it. So if you and I cannot control our tongue in the month of Ramadan, if we cannot control our tongue in the month of Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ. Allah is not in need of your fasting. فِي أَنْ يَدَعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. That Allah is not in need of you to give up your food and drinks. Whereas we think fasting is what? Giving up food and drinks, isn't it? This is what we go through whole day. But the Prophet ﷺ is saying, if you cannot control your tongue in the month of Ramadan, and of course in other months as well, then Allah is not in need of your fasting. Allah doesn't need you to give up eating and drinking. Now if we go through the whole day not eating and drinking, going through the difficulties and sufferings, but end up not achieving what Allah wants us to achieve. This is also mentioned in Bukhari. Right, so one of the tools is the tongue. The other tools are al-jawarih, the limbs that we have, hands, legs, and so forth. Again, we use those limbs to commit sins. Thirdly, we also use al-qalb. We also use al-qalb to commit sins. So these are some of inbuilt tools that we use to commit sins, in addition to other tools which are available and nowadays with the technology and everything. Okay. Right. So now that we talked about the objective of Ramadan, and we said the month of Ramadan is a month of training. Now how does it help us to achieve the objective? Okay. Now a simple calculation is that Ramadan, you control sin. Ramadan, controlling sins on one hand and uplifting taqwa on the other hand. So Ramadan helps you to control the level of committing sins on one hand and raising the level of taqwa on the other hand. And this is something very important for us to understand, inshallah. So lowering, what do you call the diabetes people? Eh? No, they try to lower the level of sugar. Level of sugar, isn't it? Now here, that in the month of Ramadan, we're trying to lower the level of committing sins. So the level of sins that we commit, we're trying to lower it on one hand, and on the other hand, what? Trying to increase the level of taqwa. And this is the beautiful program that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has presented to us in the month of Ramadan, with Ramadan and with Quran. That on one hand, we try to reduce the level of committing sins, and on the other hand, we try to increase the level of taqwa. We just talked about the objective is taqwa, and we said what prevents us, the obstacles to taqwa, is committing sins. So that should be reduced so that it increases the level of taqwa. Now the question is, how is it done? How is it done and how is it achieved? And inshallah, we will go through 5 programs. This is achieved through 5 programs. Remember I said, this is the month of training, intensive, in-service training. Okay? That there are 5 programs helping us to reduce the level of sugar, Okay, reduce the level of committing sins on one hand, and on the other hand, inshallah, increasing the level of taqwa. And we will go through 5 programs, inshallah. Is that clear to everyone?
Yes.
Inshallah, let's take the 5 programs, training programs with us, inshallah, today. Number 1 is ash-shahawat. The desires, human desires are controlled. So program number 1, that in the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has divinely designed this program that we can control our desires, our shahawat. Because human beings are created with desires, and therefore if it is not controlled, then that will be their destruction. So in terms of the natural instincts, in terms of food appetite, in terms of the time, all this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in place to help us to reduce it, to reduce our desires. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we will take a break in 5 minutes inshallah. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا, the verse I recited, كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O the believers, Allah has prescribed fasting upon you, the way it was prescribed upon those who came before you, لعلكم تتقون. At-Tabari, Tafsir At-Tabari, explaining this verse, is mentioned that I كما فرض على الذين من قبلكم. Allah says, كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم كما فرض على الذين من قبلكم. It is being made obligatory for upon you. من قبلكم من أهل الكتاب, the way it was made obligatory upon the people of أهل الكتاب who came before you. And then Tafsir al-Qurtubi explains that when Allah says لعلكم تتقون, that perhaps you will attain taqwa, you will become muttaqi. He explained Tafsir al-Qurtubi that قيل معناه لعلكم تضعفون. Allah says لعلكم تتقون, that perhaps you will become muttaqi, you will attain taqwa. What this means is لعلكم تضعفون, perhaps you will become weaker. Perhaps you will become weaker. And then he explains, فإنه كلما قل الأكل, every time you eat less, what will happen? فإنه كلما قل الأكل, every time you eat less, ضعفت الشهوات, your desires are weakened. Every time you eat less, your desires are weakened. وكلما ضعفت الشهوات, and every time your desires are reduced, weakened, controlled, what will happen? قلت المعاصي, the level of committing sins also reduces, because you become weak. When you are strong, you commit more sins, but when you are physically weak, you commit less sins. Does that equation make sense? That فإنه كلما قل الأكل ضعفت الشهوات, every time you eat less, so you go to restaurants less. Nowadays the trend is that you go to restaurants once in a week. MashaAllah, our Muslim community is quite rich, isn't it? We can afford to go. And once you go to the restaurant, then MashaAllah, the quantity and the quality of food also increases. Okay. If you walk around nowadays, in this sort of area, the restaurants are buzzing. If you go in the evenings, so فإنه كلما قل الأكل ضعفت الشهوات. Every time you eat less, your desires are reduced. وكلما ضعفت الشهوات, and when every time your desires are reduced and controlled and reduced, قلت المعاصي, your sins also reduces. Okay, because you become weak, and therefore you cannot commit sins. Okay, much sins. طبعا this is just one explanation. وقيل هو على العموم, and it is said that when Allah says لعلكم تتقون, it is the general meaning that you attain taqwa. But it's just one dimension giving the explanation how the taqwa is achieved. Because we said the level of committing sins is reduced, so that the level of taqwa is increased. وقيل هو على العموم لأن الصيام كما قال عليه السلام الصيام جنة that fasting is like a shield. وسبب التقوى لأنه يموت الشهوات. And the way taqwa is achieved, that fasting helps to kill your desires. We say to kill the time, isn't it? Okay, so fasting helps you to kill your desires, and that helps you to attain taqwa. Are we clear with program number 1? So this is 1 out of 5 programs, inshallah. Shall we take a short break and then continue with the remaining 4 programs? Let's take a 5 minutes break, inshallah. Yeah, let's take 10 minutes.